All right, welcome everybody. We're back here on Tennis Channel Inside In, joined as always by one of my favorite guests on the show, Monica Puig. We're 8 years and a day from the gold medal. So I know retirement, you've been like the most active retired athlete of all time, but thanks again for joining the show.
No, for me, it's always a highlight when I come back to the Tennis Channel studio. So thank you for having me again.
Yeah, and does 8 years feel like insane amount of times passed? I know it still brings up the best memories, but it doesn't seem like it was that long ago.
No, sometimes it feels like it was a long time ago. I was 22 years old. I'm almost 31, and you're just kind of like, wow, that's a long time. And other times it's like, it feels like it was just yesterday. And, that's the funny thing about time and how quickly it really does pass, because fact of the matter is it was 8 years ago, and that's just incredible how quickly it's gone.
Yeah, it really shows you, too, just how special these games are, because they only happen every 4 years.
Exactly.
And we watch not just tennis, but these sports, and you think, man, that was exciting. I have to wait 4 more years to get it again.
Right. Seriously.
So I want to know, is there going to be a group text now, like a gold medal group text, where you get everyone involved? Especially because you got the inside track now, like you're all represented by the same guy.
I mean, I texted Marine before that final. I was like, do you realize the effect that you've had? Because the last two were gold, and now you have a potential for a third in a row. And that was pretty incredible right away. Obviously, I still talk to Belinda from time to time. Kinwen, I send her a couple messages like congratulations and all that stuff. But it's super cool that actually happened and how rare that is. But, I really enjoy the Olympics because of that underdog factor. Sometimes, it's not always status quo. Number one wins everything. Djokovic, that was amazing, but that was what he was missing in a way. And it was like a huge kind of Cinderella story for him as well, because everybody was like, no, Alcaraz is going to win or whatever. Djokovic with his knee injury, but it almost had that underdog feel. It almost had kind of like that surprise story. And I love those at the Olympics, because sometimes, and, in my case in particular, it's like, you're a superhero when you play for your country. And that's something that's really challenging to do, because you're really not playing for yourself. You're playing for a nation. And sometimes it brings out the best in some athletes.
It's a very good point. Even on the men's side, we think about this dominance. The top seed hasn't won. I can't remember if it's happened, because Djokovic, Murray wasn't the top seed when he won his gold. Djokovic wasn't this time, Still just remarkable stuff. And the third place bronze medal match means a lot too, which we saw on both sides.
Oh yeah, because we don't have a third and fourth place at events usually. It's always, you just have the winner and the finalist, and that's about it.
So Chinwin wins the gold. I did want to ask you just the only photo. I want to ask you what you think about this fashion choice.
I love it.
Medaling isn't for everyone.
I mean, I love it. That Nike sweatshirt, I would be wearing it all day, every day. It's insane. And she has every right to wear it, because medaling isn't for everyone. You have 3 at the Olympics only. And, it's so rare. And like we were talking about, it's once every 4 years. So, the Olympics are a big deal. And, we're talking about this like post-Olympic hangover that all of a sudden we're seeing with some of these post-Olympic results.
Yeah.
It's because it takes a lot out of you. It's a huge event. When you think about it in the tennis world, it's a bubble, and you're seeing the same people all the time. You go to the Olympic Village, maybe conditions aren't as ideal as staying at a 4 or 5 star hotel where your breakfast is absolutely perfect every single day. But that's the beauty of these Olympics, is that you have so many athletes who are just so happy to be there and compete and have the opportunity to live out this moment, that they're just kind of like, whatever comes my way, I'm here for it. And then you make all these new connections, new friends. You get to learn about new sports. Mentally, it could be overstimulating. And I mean, speaking from experience, I got knocked out, like thumped in the first round of the US Open after that. But being what it is, the Olympics are an experience that I feel like every athlete deserves to be a part of.
So I guess on that point too, and I know how much it meant to you and all these athletes that compete and then excel, or if they're fortunate enough to win a medal, would you recommend, if you can afford it, both with the ranking point and luxury, taking a little time off, gathering yourself? I know tennis players just love to play, but is it better if you maybe take that break?
I mean, I would love it if it wasn't just before the US Open. Obviously, our schedule, look, let's call it what it is. It is loaded.
I mean, we have 2 Monday finals because that's the best that they could do.
It's insane. Yeah. It really is. And then you have 2 of the biggest tournaments, WTA 1000, ATP 1000, Masters event. And it's a lot. It's a lot of tennis. It's a lot of mental energy. It's a lot of travel. We saw them going from Paris all the way to Toronto, Montreal, or Cincinnati. It's a long flight. And it's a lot. Again, it's very overstimulating, the Olympics. And yes, if it would have fallen in a part of the calendar, maybe just after Wimbledon, where you don't really have to just get right into the hard court season, you can say, okay, after the Olympics, I already played tennis. Let me take 2-3 weeks to kind of like decompress and then get ready for the US Open. But the tennis schedule, and this is something that we've been talking about for many years, it's unforgiving.
Yeah, that's a good point. It is unforgiving, though. Props to the players that went to Canada and handled business.
Hey, I pulled right out of Cincinnati because I felt like I needed that break. And even then it wasn't enough. Yeah. But for a player to kind of like,
I know.
Even if you lose in the first round, it just says a lot that they're able to flip the script that quick.
And your case is special, unique in a lot of ways that Americans can't relate to, because it was truly celebrated.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to, like, if an American wins a gold.
48 athletes only versus like the hundreds of
If American tennis players wins a gold, it's not going to be treated with the same reverence as yours was.
Yeah.
That said, Canada was exciting. I feel like the last time we were on the show, we were talking about how good Jessica Pegula was, and you were talking from experience.
Yeah.
I was on another podcast this week, and I said this, even going into the final, like, I'm starting to see that she's back to being her efficient, her dominant self in a lot of ways. That performance was flawless in the final against Anisimova, even though the second set was dicey and didn't go her way. But there's a lot to like about Pegula. You talked about her underrated power and how frustrating it can be to play against her. But when everything's clicking, she's just a tough matchup for a lot of these players.
And she's been this way since as long as I've known her. I mean, we played in the juniors together. We played in a grade A final in Brazil, actually, when we were 16 years old. And, you know, a lot of the time, you know, and a player who deals with injuries as much as she has when she was growing up, you know, you would have thought, okay, these injuries when you're a teenager, a young adult, derail you completely. The fact that she's put the work in, she's really dialed into the fact that it's the small details that matter. I mean, her coming back from the injuries, I used to love watching her just in the gym get ready for a practice session. She would spend 45 minutes, even before activating her body, foam rolling, stretching, doing her prehab exercises, just getting her body ready to even warm up. It's like the warm up before the warm up. And she is just so disciplined in all of these things. And it really says a lot about how much she cares for the game. Like Michael Moe said, her and Emma Navarro, you know, they come from very wealthy backgrounds. They don't need to do this sport. You know, they could comfortably do something else, maybe follow in their family's footsteps, but they choose to do this for a reason, because they love the sport. They love the thrill. They love the fight. And they do all of these little things well. I mean, on top of that, it's insane. And Jessica has made a name for herself both on and off the court, you know, with her skincare brand. So she's making her own way in the world. She's building up her own brand, her own name, you know, without whatever the family history is in sport and what her family has grown up to be. For me, I've always admired the fact that she has just been always this headstrong.
The two things that stood out to me in this tournament specifically were that she handles the elements as good as any player. It was windy. It wasn't great. It doesn't affect her, and she can, in a weird way, use that to her advantage. The other thing is, it was that crossroads period, right? We always ask these questions, and they're justifiable questions. You hit a certain age. You hit a certain point with injuries. Have you hit that crescendo? Is it going to start to go down? There was time off. She didn't have a great summer, but then here we are, and now we're going into a US Open where the other top contenders might not be in the best form as we're seeing, so why can't she add herself to the mix?
I mean, she, like you were saying, she battles the elements so well because mentally she's also extremely solid. We're talking about how solid her game is and how compact her strokes are, how hard she can hit the ball. But mentally, I feel like she's always there. She's always in the conversation. We've been talking about her for a really long time now at being a Grand Slam contender. I still think she's in that mix. I still think she is kind of like that dark horse pick that a lot of people will talk about, you know, whatever. And then she kind of flies under the radar and then all of a sudden pops up in a quarterfinal. And you're like, why weren't we talking about her as being a big time favorite from the beginning? It's like, well, we have all of these other big names, but when you look at the ranking, her trajectory, her results, I mean, backing up a Masters 1000 title is very difficult because when you think about it, she did in Toronto, She did Montreal the year before. Those are two completely different places, different conditions, different courts. And she was able to do that. When she won her first 1,000 title, you know, everybody was talking about, okay, when is this big breakthrough going to come? And she was able to break that barrier. Yeah. You know, splitting up with her coach, wanting a new, fresh voice. I feel like there are so many things that are going in her direction, in her favor right now. And she seems very content both on and off the court. And, you know, you need that balance to be happy, to be enjoying what you're doing. Not to say that she doesn't get frustrated, because we all do, but I feel like she's handling the moment very well.
Couldn't agree more. It was a phenomenal win for her. And also a note, just great to see Anisimova back. Yes. Playing well, enjoying tennis, handling losses. Well, so much as you know about this sport is your ability to handle and process the losses, learn from them, and keep moving forward. That was a great showing for her, who still, I mean, Pegula said it perfectly, one of the best clean ball strikers there is in tennis. I
mean, her forehand, her backhand, her serve, she really does hit a clean ball. And when she stepped away from the sport, you know, I showed her some of my encouragement, just saying, you know, take that time for you, get yourself right, do what you need to do. You know, she went to school for a little bit, dabbled in some art. You know, she did things to make herself happy. And you know what? She kind of did exactly what Simone Biles did in that one point in time, is I need to focus on my mental health, because how can I excel at the top of my sport if mentally I'm not right, if I'm not happy, if I'm really not enjoying what I used to love about this sport in the first place? And I think that takes a lot of maturity to recognize that, to be so public and open about it, because she has also been in the conversation for many years as a big promise for American tennis since she was very young. So you know what? I feel like she also did it at the right time. She still has a lot of time left to do some pretty great things. She's still very young, and we treat her as if she's, you know, a veteran, which she probably is at this point. But she has a lot of time on her side.
Well, she's a draw wrecker for sure when she's on.
I don't want her on my side. Absolutely not.
The players probably just want her seated at this point. Like,
and unfortunately, you know, she pulled out of Cincinnati. Maybe won't be seeded at the US Open, but for any seed, you know, 1 to 32, look out.
The other woman I want to give props to was Diana Shnaider, who what she did. And again, I think with tennis fans, you know, whether it's casual fans, analysts, former players like yourself, sometimes we just like different uniqueness, and what she brings to the game is pretty cool, because it's not an emulated style. She's very unique in how she plays, but beats Coco Gauff, keeps it going, and gets to a semifinal, loses to the eventual champion. Just a phenomenal week for her.
She's been having a phenomenal summer, you know, winning titles, winning matches, getting far in tournaments. Another person who flies under the radar. Nobody really talks about her because she has this unconventional style, because she's probably not the champion that most people, you know, would think of as a champion. But what these types of players teach us is that tennis is not, you know, or champions are not one size fits all. There's no one way to be a champion. They just happen because they have it inside of them, because they want it that bad, because they work. And what Diana Shnaider has done is put her head down, get to work, and let the tennis do the talking. Because, you know, with social media being what it is, I've seen comments like, how is she winning these tournaments? Because she's working. She's working. She's putting in the work. She's winning these matches. She's staying mentally tough, and she's frustrating her opponents.
Yeah, that last point, especially some of the angles she finds. It's one thing when we say, how did that happen on the outside? But when you see top 10 players be like, how did that angle in? How did that go in? It happened more than a few times. Where,
she probably practices it. That's how she's able to get it in these match situations, because a lot of the time, look, fact of the matter is, if you don't put it in practice, how do you expect that you're going to get it done in the match? So, you know what? I think she's on the practice court working on these specific things.
More with Monica Puig here on Tennis Channel Inside. And as we segue into the men's results from Canada, did anybody have Alexei Popyrin? I mean, that was insane. That's one of the more improbable Cinderella stories that we've seen for a guy who's had promise, who's had big results in matches. To put it together in the week of his life for a tennis player was remarkable stuff. He had to earn this, by the way, too. It was not given to him. Those match points saved against Dimitrov early, and he flies high and hoists the trophy.
And we're talking about those match points, but we're also talking about the fact that we don't really see tennis players nowadays playing 2 matches in one day, multiple days in a row, because of the elements, because it was raining so much in Montreal. And you need to be I think this is the theme for this episode of the podcast, is being mentally strong. And I feel like tennis is probably one of the only sports in the world where mentally, if you're not in it to win it from the very beginning, and if you don't accept the fact that it's going to be hard, it's going to be very tough for you to excel in any way, shape, or form. And he just did the job. He noticed he had this window of opportunity and just walked through it. Sometimes, it's right there for the taking, but if you don't grab it, somebody else will.
And you know that the opposition's not going to be very sympathetic,
especially
at all.
on the men's side.
They're
no
not
way.
sympathetic
No,
if you have
absolutely
issues.
not.
It's just, and I don't want to denigrate these players, but when you think about Australians like Nick Kyrgios, like Alex de Minaur, they don't have 1,000 title.
I mean,
Alexei
at least he
Popyrin
has
does.
that in his back pocket. He's like, oh, okay, well,
But it just shows you how hard it is to win at this level, and how he's a player that puts it together, beats Rublev, who had a good showing again. It was nice to see Rublev back on track,
yes.
Given what he's been
He's
through.
always been a favorite of mine. I think he's very nice off the court. I love what he brings to the table on the court. He's a very charismatic player. I do like his energy. I do like that fire inside of him. I feel like it's, maybe a lot of pressure. A lot of people have been talking about him as also being a favorite to maybe win a slam here in the near future. Sometimes he's okay. All of these tennis players are very young. They still have a lot of time on their side, but sometimes that pressure, people process it in different ways. I processed it maybe not in the best way possible either. But I had my own process and he has his own process. And I feel like every single time he sits down in a press conference after some of his outbursts, he knows what's going on. He knows that a change needs to be made. So he's conscious about it. And maybe this is a step towards acceptance of the fact, like, okay, I know what needs to change. I recognize it. Now let me work on it. And once you get to this point and being in the final of 1,000, he didn't blow up before then. So maybe he's working on it. Maybe he's making a change. And this is exactly the change that he needs to get to that next level.
Could be a major step in the right direction, as it was. And I know he lost today, given the fatigue and everything. But Sebi Korda had a nice run from D.C., gets to the semis, loses the Popyrin. Out early in Cincinnati, but Korda taking those steps, broke into the top 15, and he had to play 4 matches in 2 days. So I'll give him a little bit of a pass on that last one.
I definitely would as well. I think he is in need of a well-deserved rest, go home, get the body right, get ready for New York, because, I think he's earned the right to be considered also a favorite to move into the second week and do some damage. I really like what he brings to the table as well. Mentally, I think he's very stone cold faced on the court. I love the way he plays, love the way he moves. And it can't be easy also kind of being in like the shadow of this sporting family where your sister is winning majors, #1 in the world in golf. The other sister also very, very good in golf. Your dad was this tennis legend, just a big sporting family. And you're just trying to follow in those footsteps. So, I give him a lot of credit for continuing to work and doing what he's doing.
That part's certainly tough. I do think there's an advantage of being around high-level athletes for the makeup.
Absolutely.
You know how to handle business when stuff gets hard.
And it's good that he has, it seems like they're a very close and united family. So, and he can take, inspiration from his sisters. Like, golf is not easy. I win at Topgolf, but that's because like I dink the ball in like the close little corner hole right here. But golf is a whole nother story.
It's still one of the funniest quotes. He said, "I'm a 6 handicap and I'm the worst golfer in my family." So it's pretty funny. I did also want to give a shout out to, we hadn't seen him in a while. He played very well, was Hubie Hurkacz, another guy that had the injury. Weren't even sure he was going to play. And then he gets back on the court, has to play. The other thing was he waited forever to play his first round match.
Right,
so you're
that's true too.
On site for like a week, and looking pretty good to see him back, and someone that has had success on the hard courts here.
Yeah, and the good thing about him is that he can rely on the fact that he has a huge serve and he's very tall. Big wingspan, doesn't really need to do much, but there was a moment there when he was playing against Popyrin that you saw that he was probably potentially thinking about his injury and all that he's gone through. The courts were getting a little bit slick. It started, drizzling a little bit, called the supervisor out onto court, said, "I'm not going to play until this is kind of resolved." But it's good to see him back in the mix because he's been in the top 10 for a really long time. Also a Masters 1000 winner. So, all of these guys who are extremely dangerous, very good for the sport, but he's also one that really flies well below the radar and one that we need to keep our eye on.
And when you get back on court right after an injury, there's that internal fear, right? Anything goes wrong. And you're just,
and it starts in practice. Sometimes you don't even want to move for the balls in practice. And imagine when you need to have that level of intensity so high in a match, the adrenaline's flowing, you're not thinking about it, and all of a sudden, something happens, you feel something, and you're like, oh, okay. And then you get distracted. But, he's handling it well. I think, Montreal was a big step in the right direction, and we'll see where it goes from there.
So by my count on the men's side, that's 6 different Masters 1000 champions in a row. So that streak is pretty interesting.
Starting to sound a little bit like the WTA.
A little bit.
It's good to see. I feel like, I love consistency. I love to see, somebody setting the bar very high, like we've seen with Iga over the past couple of years, Djokovic, Federer, Nadal, all of them. But I do like to see people who are not afraid to say, I can beat the number one in the world, and who are not going to lose the match before walking onto the court and say, oh, well, Djokovic is my first round opponent, might as well book my flight home. No, just say, okay, what do I have to do? Let's sit down. Let's look at the tape. Let's analyze. Let's find a hole in his game where we can potentially beat him, because everybody's beatable. Everybody's human. Everybody can have a bad day. Everybody can have a great day, and you can still find a way to beat them. I like the fact that, nobody's really going onto the court being afraid of these, great tennis players.
So we're going to see Alcaraz back for the first time tomorrow. He plays Monfils, who beat Popyrin in the first round. So Alcaraz, his form is going to be a big storyline, what he looks like after the silver medal, a tough loss to Djokovic in the final of the Olympics, as well as Jannik Sinner, who lost to Rublev and again had some health issues. And that's, to me, maybe a bigger concern, because you trust that Alcaraz will ease into it. He might be rusty at first, but the Open is there. For Sinner, I can't say I'm, as thrilled when you see another injury thing, his body seeming to be breaking down in some of these physical matches.
And this is where we talk about, again, a very unforgiving calendar. He had played a lot of tennis in the lead up to his, great runs, being number one in the world. A lot of things to consider. Yeah. Him being sick, missing the Olympics, potentially was going to go, didn't know, kind of held it until the last minute, said, no, I'm not going. But these kinds of things happen. I mean, we saw it with Alcaraz as well, that all of a sudden the injuries start popping up. And then the question is like, oh, is he going to be another Nadal who starts getting injured very early?
How physical the men's game is now.
I mean, it's ridiculous. And when we talk about the 3 out of 5 sets and things like that, and how they have to recover to get ready to play in less than 36 hours, I think it's an absolute joke what they have to go through. And the fact that they're able to do it time and time again is, I applaud them. I salute them. But it's a very physical game. They're only human. They're still very young.
Yeah.
I feel like Sinner has, a ceiling of things that he can continue to improve on. And I feel like maybe physically he's still nowhere near his ceiling.
Right.
So, there's a lot of things that can potentially happen. And he could become a freak of nature in the future, because he does have a lot of time on his side.
Yeah, we just want to see him healthy and not pushing. It's just unfortunate he's had this issue, and hopefully the fitness gets right. Curious to see what Alcaraz looks like. Spoiler, too, if you're listening out there, you already know the answer, but we're recording while Iga's playing right now.
Oh, yeah, we keep glancing over at the screen.
She's in set 3, which is crazy. So I was going to ask you before, because it looked like Iga had this match under control, what her form would look like if she's a little sluggish. Well, she wasn't sluggish early with the bagel set.
Right.
But not as crisp, I think is fair to say. And the other point to keep bringing up with this Olympic hangover, we're going from clay to hard court.
And these hard courts are very quick, and not every single hard court in Cincinnati plays the same. I have played on some outdoor courts that are lightning fast, to then playing on grandstand, which played slow, to then on stadium court, which also played fast. So, I mean, Again, the Olympics brings so much, and she did win a bronze medal, and that is absolutely huge. She went through a whole bunch of emotions. Everybody thought she was going to win, and she's the gold medalist for sure, until, the underdog came and put her in her place. And, I feel like what she had to do to kind of get her head right and just say, okay, I need to reset because I still have a match the next day. But Iga is Iga, and Iga is, without a doubt, one of the mentally strongest players, both men and women, on
for sure
in the Open era right now.
She's already got a U.S. Open title to her name. We know that clay is where she dominates, but is there an indicator for how she plays or things she's doing right? Because we know that it's not all about this match or even this tournament, but what's something she does well that's an indicator that, okay, this is when she's rolling?
I feel like when she takes time away and when she looks like she has a lot of time on the court, on the faster courts, I feel like it's tougher because she does like to have a lot of time to execute. It's not, I feel like her footwork is the best thing that she does because she sets herself up well for success and she looks like she has that little bit of extra time before she hits the ball. But she can get away with that a lot on clay because the clay slows the ball down a lot. But on faster courts, you might see her, get jammed quite a bit. And that's where I want to see some of these big hitters in the US Open step up and say, okay, this is what I need to do. But I feel like she's always going to kind of find her way around the court. Right. She's going to, try and close those holes that are vulnerable.
We'll see if it's Sabalenka, if it's somebody like Rybakina, who's kind of been snake bitten with some injuries and stuff, similar to Sinner, or someone like Coco Gauff, who hasn't found her footing, still doing very well this year, but compared to last year, it's hard to top what she did, and has had a run of poor results against the top 50 players. I think it's 4 in a row losses. So how do you think she could find and regain that momentum and just start to build?
There was a lot of pressure on her going into the Olympics, being the flag bearer for the United States. Pretty much all the eyes of the USA were on her and LeBron in the opening ceremonies. There's a lot to deal with. I was very curious to see after she won the US Open and she was riding that high, what this year was going to look like for her, needing to defend all the points that she got from Washington to Cincy to then the US Open. Fact of the matter is it's not like it's never going to be in the back of your mind, all the points that you need to defend. And for Coco, she's still young. It's still very fresh. It was, she's always going to be the US Open champion. And that is always going to be attached to her name. And what she did last year was nothing short of spectacular. She played so well. It was very evident the changes that she made in her game. She was serving well, moving well, competing incredibly well. Mentally, I think even stronger than Iga. She was just flawless the whole entire time. And we saw that kind of building from Washington. And all of those changes were very, very apparent to anybody who was watching her then from a couple months prior. And, I think she kind of needs to, take a breath and just kind of like say, okay, this is where I'm at right now. I'm defending all of these points, but hey, I am Coco Gauff. This didn't stumble upon me by accident. Right. Like I worked really hard to get here. She still has that potential. She still has that capability. She is very strong. I did notice at the beginning of the season, she put in the work physically. She's much stronger now. And she still has it within her to repeat because, at the US Open, you have all the fans on your side. You're a U.S. woman who has won the U.S. Open. And you know what? I think the crowd is going to embrace her. Just try and feed off of that a little bit.
She's proven that she is a bona fide superstar. The fans love her. She embraces that. So if she does start to play better, which we think she will, then the crowd will follow her on and cheer on. But there's, there's time.
She has time. I mean, even if Cincy doesn't go very well, we hope that it does. But, just... I would even think about it, just like trying to dull the noise because there is a lot of noise, especially with social media. She is very active on TikTok and Instagram and all of these things. Try and quiet the noise as much as possible and kind of, in those moments, speaking from experience, which I definitely didn't do as much. And this is one of the things that maybe I would have changed is like, let me tighten my circle.
Right.
And let me confide within this tight-knit circle and talk about how I'm feeling and kind of help, have them help and guide me because, going into a Grand Slam, it's mentally exhausting those 2 weeks. So you need to be in the best place and as relaxed as possible.
This is just a fascinating time. I keep coming back to that because all these contenders on both tours are still questions. There's still players that have good momentum and then have some question marks. So it's shaping up. You can have
a player who's ranked in the top 50 who all of a sudden is feeling it for 2 weeks and then, they become a Grand Slam champion. It could happen.
There hasn't been that buzzsaw on either tour that's just steamrolling. Everybody's raised their level. There's been upsets. It's going to be a fun couple weeks here.
Oh, yeah.
Last thing here, we're wrapping up here the tennis talk with Monica Puig on Tennis Channel Inside In. Just a quick one. What do you think we're going to see? What type of tennis Novak Djokovic when he does come back? Going right to the U.S. Open.
I mean, he's taking the time to do what I wish I had the time to do, soaking up that gold medal win because
it's quite a party. It's quite a party in Serbia right now.
Okay, let's just say it for what it is. Yeah. This is what he needed to kind of, I'm not saying he's done. by any means.
But he's never said before, yes, I'm satisfied. Like,
no, he's never going to be, because he's a champion. But
this is when he opened it, and he's
this
like,
is
yes,
the one that
I feel
he needed. I mean, he has it all. And, you know, in a way, I really wanted him to have this. I wanted him to get that win. I love Alcaraz, and I love the way he plays. And you know what? I said it from the very beginning. I want Djokovic to win this, because we don't know how many more times Djokovic is going to have this opportunity. Alcaraz, still super young, has so many more Olympic games left in him. But for Djokovic, this I feel like he can play a little bit more freely now and just kind of enjoy this a lot more, because he's like, okay, result-wise, I am the GOAT.
Yeah.
Because I have it all. And I can firmly just say, look, it's not, you know, a conversation. It's not up for debate. It's there. It's in facts. It's on paper. Will he have enough time to rest? Will he be thinking and prioritizing that rest? Absolutely, because he is a professional. He knows what he needs to do. And like every top athlete or top tennis player, Grand Slams are really important to them. And they know exactly what they need to do. Somebody who's won it that many times knows what he needs to do to get his mind and his body right before a slam.
I don't know if there's an athlete that knows their inner workings of their body better than him.
No, the amount of things that he does in order to ensure that his body is 1,000% ready to compete. I mean, I feel like there are very few people out there who are as professional as him. It's
crazy. It really is. Well, Monica Puig, this has been fun. I can't let you go, though, without asking you about the Ironman Ohio.
Oh, my gosh. That was insane.
70.3.
Yes.
I actually knew I had a family friend who was in it as well.
Awesome.
And so I was looking at it, and, the bike ride was, I think, 56 miles on the bike, 1.2 swimming, and then like a half marathon.
Yeah.
So what was that like? How much did that take out of you? And then ultimately, what was that euphoric feeling like when you crossed the finish line?
Oh, my gosh. It was my best race for sure. I mean, the swim was... I'm going to say it was my best race, but the swim was absolutely horrendous. It was in Lake Erie. I felt like I had no traction in the water. I felt like I was constantly sinking, and I was praying for it to be over. The bike was great. It was flat. It was fast. I had a little bit of a mechanical issue, but, I was able to kind of keep my mind where it needed to be. And then the run, I just had fun. It was great because I had, my tri club there with me. I had a teammate who was doing the race. My husband was doing it as well. Had a great time and ended up qualifying for the World Championship in Marbella next year. Wow. Currently preparing for my first full September 22nd, the full Ironman World Championships in Nice. So I have about a little bit under 5 weeks before I head back over to France to do that. And when you talk about the fact that it was 5 hours and 11 minutes for the half, knowing that it's going to be double that and probably even more because the bike course is going up mountains.
What are the distances?
It is a 2.4 mile swim, 112 mile bike, and a full marathon at the end.
That's so
I'm looking at a full. I'm trying to shoot for under 12 hours. So that is my personal goal. If it happens, if it doesn't happen, it doesn't matter because it's a world championship race and not everybody gets to do them. And I qualified for it, and it's incredible. But it's going to be very hard, and I'm a little scared, but I'm really excited.
So I think I speak for most of the tennis world out there saying we're very proud of you. And also, like, what's the limit? When are you just going to keep going up?
I think this might be my first and last full Ironman.
Okay.
But I say that with an asterisk because, I say first and last for a lot of things, and it usually ends up not being the last. But I really do enjoy the 70.3 distance. With the amount of travel and commitments that I've had, it's been very difficult to and time consuming to train, but it's been fun. And, I do enjoy Ironman so much. I love the sport of triathlon. I love the type of discipline and the drive it's given me because I still miss that from tennis. And I love waking up every day with a purpose.
It's amazing to hear. I could see and just hear how passionate you are about doing it. It's really a cool template you're setting for athletes that have to retire earlier, that you would still find purpose and stay active.
This is my message to anybody. You are not only limited to one thing. I thought I was only good at tennis, honestly, and it wasn't until I was pretty much forced to retire that I started exploring other options and not being, in broadcasting. That's a totally different thing. But what am I going to do for my body? And being outside was one of them. And okay, let's try swim, biking, and running. And I really like it. And it likes me back so far. So let's keep rolling.
Well, Monica Puig, always one of the best guests here on Tennis Channel Inside In. We like having you at the studio. Enjoy calling all this tennis, working on TC Live, and have fun and stay safe in all your triathlete endeavors.
Thank you so much.